of people label an overbearing woman as a Jezebel and her husband as an Ahab, when in all actuality she may be openly or unknowingly practicing witchcraft. Now, the reason why these spirits are so easily mislabeled is because they interchange. So not every witch will have a spirit of Jezebel, but every real Jezebel will be acting in some form of witchcraft. Witchcraft is a sign of that spirit, but that spirit may not necessarily be there under all witches. Meaning the Queen of Heaven is the Queen of all witches on one hand, but on the other hand, even though it is, that spirit, but not all witchcraft is Jezebel. There are many types of witchcraft. So to understand this, and for this to not to kind of seem kind of straightforward, we have to go back and really understand witchcraft. Witchcraft was not something that man just, as time went on, they developed things and they learned what man can do, and witchcraft just kind of fell into the hands of man. That's not what happened. Witchcraft was introduced to men. The practice of witchcraft did not originate with mankind. And you've heard me allude to this. The practice of witchcraft originated with fallen angels. And really it's a mystery that we just don't know as to how they came about it or why. But it was taught to the women who were married to these fallen angels. Remember, they took wives of all they wanted before the flood. So one might say, well, after the flood, why did these things continue? Because the fallen angels are spirits. They didn't die. So these same spirits came back. It was introduced to mankind. Now, it's important that you understand that, because when we're looking at witchcraft, you're not looking at something that someone just did by accident. It was purposefully introduced into the human race and taught. The practices of witchcraft were taught by fallen angels. And I have to say that because it's important to understand that when it comes to witchcraft and Jezebel, and you're dealing with the spirit of Jezebel, the spirit of witchcraft it has already been here. It's not new. You're not dealing with anything that has not been with mankind for a very long time, but just know it did not originate from mankind. So this is why you don't classify witchcraft necessarily by mankind or by a type. You classify witchcraft by the fallen angel from which it originates. So you have marine witchcraft, you have witchcraft from the Queen of the Coast, you have witchcraft from the Queen of the Heaven, which is Mary, Ashtoreth, Ishtar, Isis, whatever, Diana, whatever name she's taking, Jezebel. You have witchcraft that comes straight from Satan. Some people call it Satanism, but it still uses witchcraft as their way. So there's not a witchcraft that exists outside of the realm of fallen angels. In other words, even though witchcraft is practiced by mankind, it's practiced by rebellious human beings and fallen beings. Man does not necessarily have his own kind of witchcraft. Now listen, this is the thing that will be up for a lot of discussion, because they'll say there are plenty of them that determine it. But even if you would believe me, and I know this is hard to believe, but even computers and technology, all the things that we've gotten this way have come from somewhere else. Man was not the originator of all of this. We received things because a spirit has to be received. So all of the witchcraft that you see in its rebellion has a source that's supernatural. And these spirits introduce it into mankind by any number of methods. You know, those pharaohs of olden times who received all of these things and they learned how to make all these pyramids, they didn't just figure it out. These things were given to them by spirits. And these spirits were around for the first world order. They were around for the second one. So when you deal with the spirit of Jezebel, Jezebel has her own type of witchcraft, and she oversees witchcraft in the heavenlies. A Jezebel spirit will oversee a marine attack because it is my understanding from the teaching that I've heard, and I believe to be true, that the Queen of Heaven is the queen over witchcraft. You know, we also have major entities like Leviathan and Apollyon and the Queen of the Coast, and they all have their respective titles. But when we're dealing with Jezebel as the Queen of Heaven, understand that this particular spirit has its own branch of witchcraft, works very closely with Python, and does a lot of witchcraft overall. So if you're dealing with Jezebel as a spirit, I guess you could say as a territorial spirit, then you'll find high level mind control. And you're no longer dealing with just the church. This is being done overall. So you may have entire cities, as the Bible said, that are bewitched. They're under the spell of Jezebel. You may have entire nations that are being bewitched. There are things that are going on in our heavenlies, and they're under the oversight of this spirit among many others. And it takes time to study the Bible to know exactly where the kingdom of Satan is, to understand exactly what's going on in the heavens, and to read the Bible as it is and not as has been put. You know, we've kind of cleaned things up and mainstreamed Jesus, and in an attempt we've almost made it like a story, but it's not a story. There are things that have been established by spirits that did not originate from earth, and these personalities like Jezebel will oversee territory. They call them territorial spirits, and most of the time the ones that are called territorial spirits are strong men. Now you can have strong men down to the level of even your animal over your area, but these are territorial strong men. And so you have a territorial strong man that can be so strong that literally the prince of angels, one of them, the warrior prince, Michael, has to fight with, or has to battle with Gabriel to get this answer to a prayer, because that is how strong this territorial spirit was. Now, what makes that spirit strong enough that they would even dare God's holy archangels? But this is the easy answer. And I can say it by making it a much smaller thing, and if we scale it, we can understand what's going on a little bit better. If I have a strong man of smoking, and I like to smoke, I want to smoke. Smoking is bad, but I do it, and I do it every day, maybe 10 times a day, I don't know. And if I have given over myself to the spirit to the point that it has created a stronghold. A stronghold is what exists in your mind, your ideology. Strongholds are mental mental positioning. And it is cemented in, and it's very difficult to change. That's why it's strong. Now, if this strong man now has risen up and created a stronghold, it is very difficult for anyone to come in and to deliver you from that. Even Jesus himself, when he went to Jerusalem, he could only do a few miracles because these spirits had come in with their familiarity with Jesus and used it as a strong man to create a stronghold in the mind of the people, and so they could not receive it. So if even God himself can't heal you when you have a strong hold, that should let you know the power in your worship and the power in what you give yourself over to. So if a person has a stronghold in their mind that convinces them of a certain thing, even the archangels of God may not be able to necessarily deliver you until you are willing to change your mind. Once you change your mind, that is repentance in a nutshell. You will now pull down strongholds, cast down vain imaginations, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God by bringing every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. But you can't just bring these thoughts captive, because thoughts are, and we'll talk about it. I actually talked about it in one of my books. I don't think I have that book. I would love to go over that a little bit more. But you bring these thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ, and you're willing to revenge all disobedience when it's time comes. Now, saints, we're going to talk about thoughts, and I'm going to be really brief because I don't have the book in front of me. And I'm pretty sure that this was the book, it was either Covenants, Contracts, and Curses, or it was Finding the Missing Coin. But I went into basics of how the thoughts are, there's certain creation of energy that's associated with a thought. A lot of thoughts may or may not even originate in your head. They can be sent to you. They can be projected. And we went into that a lot in those books. And if I had the book with me right now, I would go over it. But I will put a pin in that to do one day. Now, these thoughts originate from somewhere. So what you're doing, in essence, is you tear down the stronghold by bringing the thought captive. You are the one that has to bring the thought captive. Because if a stronghold forms in your mind and you are in agreement with it, even an archangel would not be able to force you to relinquish that, because Yahweh in his wisdom and his love did not create us that way. He created us to have free will and free choice so that we could choose salvation or hell. Now that we've scaled it down, bring it back up. And the same thing is if a mindset is set in, say, an area. Now, I want you to think about your ghettos.
See the movie.
Ghettos.
One of the best pictures of the year.
Now, a ghetto is not just a place where people live and they come out. It's a mindset. And as long as everyone in this place has yielded to the same mindset, no amount of reconstructing will change it. They could come in and tear down all of the ghetto apartments, but even if they were, and they put the same people in brand spanking new things, it would come right back to the same condition. Why? Is it because they're bad people? No. But it's because of the wickedness that not lies with the people, but lies with the fallen angel that's created a stronghold over that area. It's called a territorial spirit. And this spirit will affix itself to that, and what it does is it oversees this area to keep people in a constant state of being in this ghetto. You ever hear people say you can take the ghetto out of the girl, but you can take the girl out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of the girl? That's a very real statement. It's not just ghettos. It's just an example that I'm using. Because I want to explain, I really want to get kind of granular with it and explain why these type of spirits, how a spirit of Jezebel will overtake an entire city. When these spirits change the way that your basic brain functioning works, they have officially created a stronghold. You could have a stronghold over your family, over families, entire family lines. You could have it over cities, over states, over neighborhoods. People can be convinced. And so when they're convinced, these spirits have a right of operation. And they essentially capture everybody. So you see people functioning, but they're functioning within the parameters set by this spirit. And those parameters have been created to keep the stronghold in place. So it's a little bit more difficult when you have the first generation that you get. That's why if you're looking at a ghetto situation in the old school, it wasn't as bad. But that's not the way that the devil works. Satan gets you in the place, and then he works on the descendants. So he starts to want to change and build those strongholds in very small children to keep them in place. And as he continues to deteriorate whatever the situation is, he wants to work on the young to make them willing acceptors of this thing. And this is all by design, which is a lot of the things you see. I mean, it's not just ghettos. There are a lot of just very, very just bad areas that may not be bad for a lot of reasons, but they're bad. There are some very bad tendencies in places, and these tendencies are a result of those fallen angels. So when you look at Jezebel, like all witchcraft, wants to change and control by making people do what it wants them to do and making them think it was their idea to do it. That's witchcraft. It seeks to oversee as many people as possible and to change their brain functioning to be a willing acceptor. So, sometimes you can change people by television, by changing popular opinion of what's right and wrong. You can use influencing, which I talked about, the Jezebelic influencing. You can use your groups, the company of Jezebel, to influence people and to incite people against dissenters who don't conform to what you want them to conform to. I mean, these things seem very, very hard to believe. And I can imagine someone would probably say, I think you're going too far, Sister Zion. But to be quite honest, I'm not even hitting the beginning of the iceberg here. A Jezebelic attack often comes from the heavenlies. And I alluded to this before, so I'm going to go back there again. So you have cults, and you may have one little very thin man, and he literally has hundreds, if not thousands of people in so much fear that they cannot eat, sleep, drink, or do anything without consulting with this man. He's, marrying their young 10, 11-year-old daughters. And, these are people who reasonably would kill someone for touching their daughter, but their reasoning and their mindset has been so altered. This is the same spirit. It has now entered in and become a stronghold and changed the way that these people see the world. They don't see the world like someone who is not overseen and being oppressed by this spirit, and in some cases possessed. Jezebel can come onto television as enter in and create this thing where It's, mother knows best. And it's the wise woman, especially in many cultures. It's the wise woman. All of a sudden, if you even look at TV, men are replaced as being wise. Even elderly men are now, even the elderly men have been replaced by women as being the wise, level-headed people in a family. Now they're like a child, like an older child. And people will say that's not true. It very much is. If you look at the modern depictions of the husband, he's not a strong pillar for the family. He's more unstable and more like the child, like the oldest child. With the wife running the house like the husband, and maybe a grandmother or someone coming in and taking that strong lead role as the level-headed person. And when we look at that, you look at the things that the wife gets upset about. Most of the time it's silly, very petty, very dumb, and she's always making a fuss, and they're always bending over backwards to cater to her. And you think to yourselves, well, this is just television. Well, it really isn't. What it is a conditioning. It is a Jezebelic conditioning. When you drive by certain areas or you do certain things, you are being conditioned. And the conditioning is for a reason. It is to open up and create a fertile ground to create a stronghold. And to allow the strong man to oversee your mind and to shift your mind. Remember, witchcraft means to bend your mind to its ideologies of what it's trying to get you to become. So when you're dealing with Jezebel, that you will see that spirit oftentimes. It almost seems like it's a feminine thing. You want to be empowering women, but this is very sinister because it's not about empowering women. One thing I've noticed about these Jezebelic attacks like this is that they'll come in on the heels of something that's good, and they'll take that good thing and use it to slide all sorts of things in that don't have anything really to do with the initial thing that it came in on. Now it's something else. And you're hard pressed to find a man that takes a strong stand on any show. But you'll see the women take very hard and very stubborn stands against the husband, and it's just, don't do anything, just apologize to the woman. And I think that if we don't understand that this is an attack, or understand that an attack in the spirit realm doesn't necessarily always look like an attack in the natural. They're attacking the way you think. Every time you watch it, if you don't cover yourself with the blood, you don't refuse to let it shift your mindset, that's exactly what it's doing, is shifting the way you see the world. Suddenly, the way you look at the world is different. You look at the world and you think, women are right and they're smart. Older women take the place of a husband, and the husband's just like one of the children. And this is a Jezebelic tactic. Now, Jezebel was a good wife. Jezebel was not a great anything else, but she did love her. She did take care of her husband. The reason why they call that spirit Jezebel is because the Jezebelic spirit will get right next to power and will assume the power of the person it's next to. In this case, you have a woman that will align themselves with the man and will use that man's signet by taking the power of the man and working it through the man. Not all overbearing, pushy, and just rude women are Jezebels, though. Some women are like that because of witchcraft. There's two types of witchcraft. There's witchcraft of the flesh and witchcraft of the spirit. Not all witches are Jezebels. So a person may be like that, and they may be cunning and manipulative and all of those things because they're witches, knowingly or unknowingly. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a Jezebel. A Jezebel is a power-hungry person. There are some overbearing women who are also very much aware of what they do, and they're sensitive. They may be overbearing somewhat, but they also can demur. They just have some things that are making them behave that way. Not necessarily a Jezebel, even though that all gets linked in together, it isn't. And it's very, very difficult to go against what we're taught. And the reason why we need to know this is because if you're calling out a spirit of Jezebel because a woman's overbearing and she's never getting delivered, it could be because that spirit isn't there. It could be that instead of calling out Jezebel, you need to bind up the spirit of witchcraft. Honestly, if you're delivering and being delivered from Jezebel, you always need to bind up witchcraft first. Whether it's Jezebel suspected or isn't, you always have to deal with witchcraft before you can deal with Jezebel. Because at the root of every Jezebelic spirit is witchcraft. Witchcraft is at the root of a lot of spirits. So you have to bind up that witchcraft. If you don't like what you're seeing in your area and you see a lot of this Jezebelic culture. Remember I told you the culture of sons being the man of their mama's house and not having their own house, or the buck system where they're laying babies everywhere. You don't like that. You see that in your family, your neighborhood. You know it's Jezebel. Bind up witchcraft first. Because witchcraft is real. It's not I wish it was a figment of my imagination. But it isn't. It's a very real practice that it's been practiced for many generations and oftentimes is passed down. You know, you may not know who in your neighborhood or your community is practicing witchcraft, but I guarantee you there are plenty of people that are. And they're not very repentant about it. Just going to be honest with you. And you may not know why some of the things in your life are happening like they are. Because oftentimes things that are tied into witchcraft, people are very, very clueless that witchcraft is at the heart of it. They don't know it. And it's by design. The devil doesn't want them to know. He doesn't want them to know that he is at the root of all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here, and I'm going to come back and we're going to do the prayers. Because ultimately, we want to round this up just praying against Jezebel tonight. So I'll be back shortly. Until then, saints.
At Caramount Health, we know what it takes to deliver exceptional care. More than just our advanced technology and breakthrough treatments, it takes our entire team of selfless, compassionate people. People who treat you, not just your symptoms. People who believe kindness makes the best medicine even better. And that's why here, extraordinary care starts with you. Caramount Health. Care first.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.